Well, times change. If we really look at like work from a historical standpoint, there was a time before Henry Ford that people were working 80, 100-hour, 120-hour work weeks for $3, with no safety, no vacation, no retirement, no protection for employees. And, people advocated and fought for healthy working conditions, and maybe we should get safety equipment, or now you can't sue me if my arm gets ripped off in your machine, that I broke your machine with my arm. That like times change. And from a generational standpoint, well, we just had to go to work and suck it up. I mean, there was not that long ago in recent history where sexual harassment was commonplace and legal, and everybody knew it, and it just turned a blind eye to it, where that's not the case anymore. And so us leaning into this idea that the workplace should be safe, it's not like a novel idea. um, it's just people are not putting up with the toxic behavior anymore. And this is something that leaders have to be willing to acknowledge and lean into, because it's not going anywhere. You want to have good quality employees. I hear, leaders all the time like, yeah, again, nobody wants to work anymore. Nobody cares. Well, they will care. If they care about you, they will care about the work. If the work is meaningful and safe, it does matter. I just, like you said earlier, when you were in that safe environment, you didn't just get there on time, you were there early. I can tell you the most productive I have ever been and dedicated I have ever been to a job was in that time period where I had those two leaders who really just got me. I don't know, for lack of a better word, like I feel like they got, and one of them I had a long-standing relationship with, and so we had history. The other one I had never worked with before. Never. And it was like, welcome to the team. Let's hit the ground running. I had never felt so seen and like respected in my whole life. And it actually took me to a higher level, because I felt so respected by my leader. I didn't want to disappoint her. So I worked harder to make sure that her what I felt like her view of me, I would her view would never change. I wanted her to look at me as someone who was respectable. And so I acted respectable. You
Yeah.
know, I've had other leaders tell me, and I mean this, someone needs to knock you off your pedestal, and it's going to be me. Do you think that I was like, oh, you are right. Thank you so much for humbling me. I'm sorry that I'm performing at a high level. I will definitely simmer down. No, absolutely not. I was like, okay, you want to go? Let's go. So again, I chose violence. per, not real violence, not physical violence, but I'm like, you want to play? Let's play. Again, I'm a Scorpio, so I'm like, I'll do the long game, bro. I'll do the long game. And by the way, I outlasted that lead. I did outlast that one. I won that battle. But who really won? Because I ended up leaving that job anyways. Once I got rid of that one person, I was like, I won. I'm out. By the way, here's my 2 week notice. So again, it's a two-way street, like the psychological safety. Yes, as leaders, we have to create psychological safety, but we also have to teach the skill so other people can do the same. It takes like it's creating the culture of safety, and nipping in the bud very quickly those behaviors that people sometimes participate in that don't lead to safety for other people. Right? I might be doing it because I have a valid reason. Maybe I'm lashing out, or I'm dealing with my past work trauma, you know. But as a leader, we've got to nip that stuff in the bud really, really quickly, so that it doesn't become the norm and it doesn't become the culture. And if you have a toxic work environment, and here's how you'll know, you have a toxic work environment if people don't work there. They don't want to work there. If you have a trouble filling vacancies, or you perpetually have like turnover, it's probably not the job, it's almost always the environment. And so if you're really struggling to keep your vacancies filled, it probably is the work environment. You have to do some scanning and do some diagnostics there to see, what is it about this environment? Why do people leave? By the way, not everybody goes out in a blaze of glory on their exit interviews to tell you exactly what's going on, because chances are they probably tried to tell you along the way and were ignored. and they choose to leave. And so I'm not going to help your organization. I've already pieced out. Or you have people who will tell you all of the things at the exit interview. And where does that information go? What do you do with that? Most of the time, it just goes into an HR file for later on, but we don't do anything with it. Check your work environment. If people don't feel safe, if they can't feel comfortable, if they can't be themselves, if they don't know where they stand, they don't have any control or choice over their work or what they do in a day, they're not going to stay. They're going to go do something else. There's lots of options. Lots of
Yeah.
options.
And you brought up a good point. I mean, a hostile work environment doesn't necessarily have to be because you're hostile. It doesn't
Right.
have to necessarily mean because you're combative, right? A place where people don't feel safe is a place that's not communicating with each other, right? That people don't know what to expect, right? People that are micromanaged, right? And people that are not recognized for what they do. And so that really is a challenge, right? And when we don't share information, a lot of people think gossip and rumors start from giving people information, right? Gossip and rumors start from no information, right? When
Right.
our brain doesn't have that information, we make it up, right? So, and then it's shared to that person that we think we can trust. And if we're trusting because we don't trust somebody else, then that there's some toxicity in that relationship as well. As much as you might be my best friend, but the reason we're best friends is because we can't stand that person, right? That's an issue, and it's not necessarily the most healthy of those relationships either, right? And so, there's a
Yeah.
model. There's a model that talks about that, right? David Rock's model, and I know you wanted to talk about that, Tiff. So
The
if you want
scarf. Yes. I, I,
scarf.
I want to say though, Brene Brown calls what you just said. We're friends because we hate the same people. She calls that common enemy intimacy. Common enemy intimacy. And I love because she uses a line from Steel Magnolias. If you don't have anything nice to say, come sit by me. Um, so in that, by the way, that gossip, I can feel very, very safe with the person who I'm gossiping with, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm contributing to a safe work environment. There's safety in the chisme, but there's not. That's creating an unsafe environment for other people, and that's where we have to be aware of our contribution to some of these unsafe environments. And again, we're going to keep it real. I have to acknowledge that I have contributed to unsafe work environments. But I also will say, and I'm not this is not a blame game. I'm acknowledging my unsafe behaviors come from unsafe environments. And so I will say I have been victim to the status quo. Victim to the status quo. Although I could have chosen better. I just wasn't in the space to do it.
Mhm.
I wasn't in the safe space to do it. I think I manage it pretty well nowadays, most of the time, 92% of the time. Okay. So the SCARF model, for those who have never heard of it, it's an acronym. And in government, we love acronyms. So if we can make a word play out of anything, SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. Now, this is not the only model in psychological safety. There's other ones out there, but they almost all say the same thing, but with different words. So, if you are down for it, we can break these down. You birthday boy? Is this your birthday wish to break down the SCARF model?
Bring it.
Let's do it. I want to start with status. Well, I start with status because it's the first one of the scarf. And to make it safe for people, we like to go in order. This status really has everything to do with your significance and your value to other people and where your status is within a group. It has nothing to do with like where you fall on the organizational chart. It has everything to do with, are you seen as an equal? Are you seen as a mentor? Do people value your opinions? Do they care about what you have to say? Um, do they ask you for information? Status has everything to do with, do you matter? I don't know how else I can describe that, but where people feel unsafe with like status, in my opinion, in my perspective, is, for example, when decisions are made for a department, but they don't talk to the department to see how they're going to be impacted. Like I don't, your status is not enough for me to check in with you and see what you think. And so, or you make a decision for me without asking me. I'm like, why wouldn't you ask me? Like, am I not important enough to give input or perspective to this? That's where I think status really comes into play. And that unsafe feeling comes from is that I'm not important enough to matter. My status doesn't matter. What is your take on status?
No, absolutely. Are you valued? Right? Is your voice heard? Right? Does it matter? Are you, yeah, and I think status does have, especially when we're talking about, government service, right? Very often, thinking about, the superior, right? And the underling and who can say what they want, the pecking order per se, right? And just having that understanding of, well, my opinion doesn't matter as much as somebody else's, or I'm not given a chance to express myself the way that somebody else is, or like you mentioned, who are you to give that type of thought, or I've been here 20 years and 25 years and let me tell you, right? And so sometimes those opinions, those thoughts, those people are valued more than folks who maybe aren't as high up in terms of experience or rank. And I think that's definitely a challenge when you want to keep people, engaged, you want to bring in new people, and you want them to feel like they're in the right place to grow, right? One of the top reasons why people leave a job is because they're not developed, right? And they're not given a chance to develop and grow. They're they're stagnant. They're not growing. So they're going to find somewhere else where they can, you know, be who they want to be. So I think, status is huge, and it's definitely one of the ones that whenever I do the scarf test, it always shows up as something that's important to me. The most important one to me though is the next one, which is certainty. So if you want to break that one down.
So certainty has everything to do with predictability and understanding like what the expectations are. So when I think about predictability, it's from two perspectives. The first one I think about is, do I know what you want from me, in the sense of what it is. Again, most work relationships are reciprocal. You want me to do something, I do it, you give me money. That's kind of how work goes. And so if you are unclear about what the outcome is, or what the process is, or what my role in that is, and then you tell me that I'm wrong, like I try to do the work and then you're like, oh, that was wrong, or I wanted you to do this instead, then I'm going to feel unsure because I'm on shaky ground. I don't know what you want from me, so I'm not sure how to meet that expectation. So that's one level of predictability, is that you give me clear work expectations and then I can do them. And then you give me feedback. Yes, you did it right, or no, this is what I wanted you to do. Create clarity. So that's one level of that certainty for me. The other for me, which again, I'm an eye on the disc, so this is important to me, is the predictability in relationships. So if I know that I can come to you with a problem and we can deal with the problem, and we resolve it and things are good. If I come to you the next day and I'm like, hey, good morning, and you're like, what's so good about it? Like,
Mm.
now I'm like, whoa, Carl, like, where's that coming from? I don't know what mood you're in. So I might hesitate to approach you with challenges or problems, or even like, let's talk about a potential solution for something, because I don't know what version of you I'm going to get. And so the certainty of our relationship becomes unsafe. I don't know what version it is. And so therefore I might stay away from you because I don't know how you're going to act. And that makes me unsafe. So if you're really nice to me one day and then you are real bitchy with me the next day, I might be like, you know what? I like the nice version, but the bitchy version is too much of a risk for me. I don't want to deal with that. So therefore, I'm going to kind of cut ties. And now our collaboration, our working together is has been impacted because I don't find you approachable or predictable. So like emotional intelligence is huge here for people who deal with the high highs and the low lows in the workplace. Just know that that creates uncertainty for other people in whether or not you're a good person to work with. And that's why keeping kind of like warm yet cool, you know, be warm and friendly, but be cool. Like you're allowed to have emotions, but be really conscientious about how those show up in the workplace
Be
because it
water,
can
my
be, what was that?
be water, my friends.
Be water. Yes, that's right. Go with the flow.
Bruce Lee would say, yeah, be water. Well, when I think of certainty, I think of trust,
Mhm.
right? And what is the foundation of trust? Integrity and consistency, right? So do what you say you're gonna do, and be that same person every day when when that other person shows up, they know what to expect. Like just like you mentioned, right? So, um, so that's definitely interpersonally, certainty is an important thing. Also, certainty is something when you're going to a job, when you're working, when you're getting things done, you want to know that the goalposts haven't changed, right? You have those expectations, like you mentioned, right? You have goals that you want to reach, objectives, right? What's the mission? Is the mission following, our daily work, tasks following the mission and vision and values of our organization, right? Do we feel like we are all pulling on the same rope at the same time for the organization? Right. And it's funny, as much as, we talked about vacations and how I really would just like to go with the flow or just kind of paint within the box per se. I also like the box, right? I like the
Mhm.
idea of I have parameters, I have boundaries, I know what to expect, to allow it even to be creative within, right? What are some things that I can ask questions about? I mean, I know I can be creative and want to help people. And I have, like I said, in those work environments that I loved with psychological safety, but I also knew there were some things that just couldn't be done just based off of regs or policies or, just budget or anything else like that. So, it so that was a definite parameter. I knew what my work time was, I knew what my expectations were. I knew, if I have a new system that I was properly trained for it, right? And those things like that that are so important to us feeling like, we can thrive.
Mhm.
Anytime there's change, there's automatic resistance. And the best way that we can manage change is through support, information, and seeing that consistent progress towards improving, right? So that certainty is huge. And it's funny because, like I said, I never thought that would be something. Certainty, yeah, I can go with the flow. I'm spontaneous. No, I can go with the flow and be spontaneous within this idea of what's expected of me, right?
Well, this is why like communication is such an important thing because it to me attaches back to that certainty and status. So
Mm-hmm.
if things are changing and you're not telling me about those changes, number one, I'm going to be skeptical. Like, well, what's coming down the pike? What's next? So I might be on edge. The second part is why am I not important enough to share this information with? Like, what's up with the secrecy? Why can't I know? Am I just a peasant? I want to know what's going so I can prepare myself with it. So, in talking about change, we should that'll be another episode. We'll talk about change. But in talking about change, this is
A
why
whole
these
episode.
things are so important. How do we make change safe? We include people in the conversation, but we also, again, give them clear expectations of what's going on. Because, like you mentioned before, what I don't know, I'm going to make up. And can I just tell you, we're super creative. I might be on a
Absolutely.
little bit on the dramatic side. So if you give me
Yeah.
a little bit of information and then a lot of it, I will spin. I will spin and spiral.
Yeah. And it goes to that performance management that we talked about, a
Yeah.
couple episodes ago. You know, if you don't know if you're walking into performance management meeting and you don't know what you're being rated on or evaluated on, that's stressful,
Yeah.
right? Having those regular meetings, checking in with people, letting people know their status, letting people know where they are on achieving their goals helps people to plan to try to achieve those goals rather than a guessing game. And
Mhm.
if we're guessing, then we're spiraling, like you mentioned. So I mean, there's
Yes.
so much to that. And so a healthy environment, has a lot of communication and expectations, for to be able to do that, which builds trust.
Okay. I have to go. I'm gonna go down a little story rabbit hole for just a second because I started thinking about the spinning and the spiraling, and it's hurricane season. Not here in California, but for everyone else. You know, if you think about like the way a hurricane forms, it starts to spin, it spiral, it picks up energy, it picks up steam, and it becomes very destructive. And it
Right.
made me think of an old supervisor that I had. She used to call me Hurricane Tiff, and she would ask me like, what category are you today? Are you a tropical storm? Are you a stage 5 hurricane? I had not yet mastered the avoiding the high highs and the low lows. I was very all over the place. And so I think about that when people start to spiral, like you can't stop a hurricane, obviously, but you can not add energy to someone who's already spiraling. How do we intervene and get in there and try to help figure out what the cause of the storm is before it spirals into a category 5 hurricane, because it can create some destruction. When people feel unsafe, they usually have unsafe behaviors, and that can ruin an organization, it can ruin a team, it can ruin a project. Like it can really be destructive. So we got to stop the spiral. Stop the spiral, create that
Spiral.
safety.
All right.
Which now leads us to autonomy. Autonomy, which by the way is my favorite one, believe it or not. I like to do what I want. Autonomy is about having people having control and choice over their life, their decisions, their work. A lot of letting go of control and letting people choose. You trust them to make the best decisions. You're not micromanaging all of the details of the day. Now, autonomy is not the opposite of certainty. By the way, if you're thinking like this is just everybody willy nilly doing whatever they want, that's not what autonomy is. It really is about kind of like Carl mentioned, like creating the box. Like here are the parameters, and you're going to have some control and choice of what you do within those parameters. So I can set as a leader some non-negotiables. I can set a non-negotiable, like for example, a clear expectation might be um, all client phone calls must be returned within 24 hours. That's a non-negotiable. That's a clear expectation. But I'm going to give you control and choice on how you do that. So whether you check your phone messages throughout the day, whether you do it in the morning, the afternoon, or after lunch, whenever you choose to do it, you have control and choice of how you approach that work as long as you get those calls returned within 24 hours. So within like a work system, we do have to have clear expectations on outcome, on processes, and how the work is supposed to be done. But at the same time, you still have to create space where people can use their creativity and their problem solving and their own perspective and ideas and experience to solve issues or to do the work. Because if every piece of it is dictated, then people just feel like a cog in a wheel, and they're not going to do good work because they don't feel like they have any control over it. And that can be stifling, and it can be you can really like cause harm for people where I have no control or choice. So therefore I feel hopeless and helpless and I don't do anything. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan. I'm not a fan of lack of autonomy. Tell me what
Yeah.
you want. Tell me what you want or tell me how you want it, but you don't get to get both.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And and another thing is if we have tasks to do, what's our style in getting them done? And is that okay? Right. I had a leader one time in a class tell me, I can't stand my direct report. And I said, why? Because he never gets things done like I think he should. I said, what do you mean? What is he doing wrong? Well, he's just not doing it correctly. And I said, well, so what's your style? Well, we have stuff that's due like by 3 o'clock. And so I start, as soon as I get there, I start working on it, building up on it. And, so that by the time 3 o'clock comes, I have everything together. And, it's been part of my day and I make it a plan. He always waits till 2 o'clock. And he takes all the information and puts it together and then has it done at 3. I can't stand it. It's frustrating. I said, well, has he ever been late? No. Well, how's his work? His work is great. Okay, so the issue isn't with his performance. The issue is with his style.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I guess. I said, well, okay, well, if somebody came and told you that your style of doing it at 9 o'clock is wrong, how would you feel? I'd tell him to shove off. Okay, okay. Well, but you're his leader, so he can't tell you to shove off,
Mhm.
right? And it was really a cool conversation that because we were there for a couple of days, and I mean, it just changed her outlook on how she was approaching that idea of our personalities, and we have different ways of getting stuff done, and to trust people will get stuff done, even though if they don't get it done like you, that's really an important piece, right? And it's the idea of working from home, right? I mean, how many people were not able to work from home until the pandemic made us work from home, and then the stats show that most people were more productive working from home, right? Which created a new paradigm, which now people feel like they're being stifled if they don't get a chance to work from home,
Mhm.
right? And so it's definitely something to think about. Those changes sometimes are happen because of mandatory things, right? I mean, most major changes happen because of something that has to get done, not something that people choose to do, right? So, all right, we are on relatedness. Or you got something you want to add to that?
I have one last thing I want to say about autonomy, and then we'll go to relatedness. And
Mhm.
that is autonomy still has to have parameters. Autonomy is great, giving people control and choice, but too much of it is too much of it.
Yep.
Just like anything else, too much is too much. And so I don't want to hire somebody from a job and I'll be like, okay, welcome to McDonald's. Welcome to McDonald's. You are now going to be making Big Macs. And I say, well, how do I make Big Macs? They're like, I trust you. Whatever feels right. Make a Big Mac in whatever way makes sense for you. Like that is a little too much autonomy, you know. You still have to give people clear expectations. So giving people control and choice doesn't mean like just do whatever you want. And I think that's sometimes where people think like, oh my gosh, we're just gonna have people just doing whatever they want. No, you still give clear direction, but you let people work how they want to work as long as the outcomes are good and we're following the process. We're not eliminating opportunities and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say that one last thing about autonomy. Autonomy doesn't mean everybody gets to do whatever they want. That's not the picture I'm painting here.
No, but if you set the stage with status and certainty where there is a specific reporting structure, this is the process, this is how we do it, this is how we do it regularly, then the autonomy can come within how are you going to do what we do regularly, right? For
Right.
sure. So, yeah.
Right. All right. So
Amen.
then that leads us to relatedness. And relatedness has everything to do with relationships. This is another one that's important to me. Do I fit in? Do we belong? Do I belong? Do you belong? Are we allowed to be ourselves? Are we allowed to be authentic? And are we accepted for who and what we are? Relatedness really is about, do we belong to the same team? Are we connected to the same goals? And without the relatedness, this is where people feel like left out. They feel othered, where cliques form, and like, you can't sit with us. We wear on Wednesdays, we wear pink. So kind of like that mean girl mentality where it's us versus them. That is psychologically unsafe. Um, but relatedness is really about people are allowed to be themselves and they're accepted for who they are and what they are, without any kind of conditions put on that in terms of their authenticity. So this is where people don't have to code switch, where people can, again, dress in a way that expresses themselves and can communicate in the way that's comfortable for them, and they're allowed to do that without retribution.
And just, the idea of belonging, right? I belong to this organization. All right. I belong to the people. We belong together. This is my team. This is truly my people, right? These are when I walk in, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the day because I'm working with folks who were all on the same team, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so, like I said, there might be differences, right? And we might have standards, different workspaces have different standards that have been around forever and they're tough nuts to crack, right? But do we feel like we're in the right place? Are we included on decisions like you mentioned, right? Do we feel like our voice is valued? Are we heard? Do people care? Right? I mean, and you have, you can be tolerated. I have this model that me and one of our colleagues, T. Frizzell, we created. It's the tolerance to belonging model. And you talk about tolerance. What is tolerance, right? Tolerance is putting up with something or somebody, right? And what do you do when you're tolerant, when you're just tolerating something, right? You just try to get through it as quick as possible, right? I tolerated eating liver because my grandma made it and I had to eat it. Lima beans. There's a whole stack of lima beans behind my mom's piano, right? That've been there for years, right? But you tolerate, you put up with it, you try to get through it as quick as possible, right? And then you have appreciation where people might recognize you as an individual and as a unique individual and appreciate your style or appreciate who you are or maybe your culture or what you bring to the potluck or your family situation or things like that's important. But then we get to inclusion, right? What is inclusion? Inclusion is when you are feeling like you are part of process. They include you on decisions, right? They include you in how we create our culture, how we connect as people, how we make decisions that will affect you and the rest of our team and our organization, and that your voice is heard, right? Um, and then we have belonging, which is different, right? Just because your voice is heard and it's included and it's valued somewhat doesn't always mean that it's welcome, right? And sometimes if there's a conversation that goes left or left according to the person who wanted to have the conversation, it didn't go exactly how they wanted it to go, you may not be invited back to have that conversation, right? Which means that you might be included, but are you truly, accepted? Do you have that belonging? Do you have to watch what you say? Do you have to, play by the rules so much that there's so many rules that it's hard to conform. If you have to conform even just in that little bit, right? And so I mean, and the idea of code switching, I code switch, right? And I don't I have a different conversation with Tiff off camera, right? We're a little bluer, right? I have a different conversation with my cousins or my dad, right? You know, um, but I have an idea, maybe it's because I'm an old fogey who just turned 52 today, of what it means to be a professional, right? But and I'll play the game. I mean, I had tattoos when I wouldn't work for the bank on my arm, so I wore long sleeve shirts. I hate long sleeve shirts. I think I've said that. They make my arms sweat. I can't stand them. But I did it for 6 years because I knew it was important. And then the CEO came in after me and said, "Dress for your day." And now you see people, with tattoos of sleeves and stars coming out of the back of their ears and things like that at the teller line at a bank, right? And so these are things that evolve over time, but you know what whatever the standard is, that's cool, but I mean, do we truly belong, right? Do we feel like we're going to be asked back, right? If we're part of a team and then someone says, well, I don't like that person, does that team leader stand up for us and say, no, they're a valued member and what they said was absolutely true, and we should, they should be heard and appreciated for bringing that up and having the courage to bring it up rather than, oh, well, we think next time maybe, you shouldn't come to the meeting, but just give me your ideas and then I can advocate for you, right? That's not belonging, right? That's not belonging. That's feeling, being included, but not quite where you can really feel like you have that safety to express yourself in a way where you are not there's not any retribution or feeling like you can be excluded.
So I think there's a difference between like code switching and being the most appropriate version of yourself for your environment, right?
Sure, no,
Because
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm often I'm Tiffany freaking Salcido, morning, noon, and night. I am who I am, and I'm very confident in who I am, but I do adapt to different roles. Like what I can say to you when we're not recording, I feel confident in doing so, but I'm just as authentic here, but just with less F words because it doesn't fit the role that I'm in, you know?
Because then I have to check that box on YouTube and Spotify. Is there swearing in this? And I,
Right.
you call
But you
someone an
know what I
asshole to say
mean?
bullshit, not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but in the workplace is the same thing. Like
Right.
I can be an authentic version of myself, but adapt to my work environment, but I can still be authentic. So
Hmm.
when we talked about what was the safest workplace, when I showed up, like we don't always see each other in person, but when I showed up, I felt like I was there every day. Like people like, oh, Tiff, so happy to see you. Like I felt welcomed. I felt connected. I felt a
Hmm.
warmness from people, by the way, that we only talk to each other maybe once every 4 months on email. But
Yeah.
when I saw them in person, I felt connected to them. I belonged in that team, even if I wasn't there every single day. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to have lunch. If you want, there's a break room down there. Like, no, it was like, hey, what do you do for lunch? You want to join us? We're all going to go out today. People, again, that I maybe talk to once every 4 months. So that was like the healthiest, right? Safe. Compare that to now. I was with a group of people from this workplace with our leader from this workplace, and I work many places, so I don't have to call them out in front of everybody, but I'm with a group of people from our workplace. I'm connected to some, but not to all. And this leader, we all took a group picture together. Like there's photographic evidence of us all together, this big happy family. Can I tell you, feet away from my leader, never said hello to me, never said, how are you doing? Never acknowledged my existence. And all of the time that we were together, walking all of us together towards that group photo, that's not belonging. I don't belong in that team. I don't feel it. I don't feel it. I feel like I've been kind of pushed to the outside. I work there, but I'm not part of that team. And if you don't think that impacts the way that I show up, it 100% does. I still do my job, trust and believe. My work
Absolutely.
is getting done. But how I contribute and how I participate is guarded because I don't belong
Yeah.
and I
But then we
can't be
talk
my
about,
authentic self.
yeah. And we talk about how people, the engagement, right? Well, I'm just here to get my job done and collect a paycheck, and don't ask me to do anything extra. Well, if you have a history of not feeling like you are part of something bigger and that you're accepted for who you are, it's very easy, right? Very easy to not feel like you're belonging. And then at the same time, you're not going to act as if, even if someone is attempting, it takes a while, it takes consistency, it takes time. Some people have trust issues from previous jobs or previous leaders, or the way that organizations were run before, or just change. There's an adjustment period, and if people are not supportive and they make judgments off of that, you're going to have a team full of folks who are scared, who are always looking over their back and not feeling like things are fair,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Which leads us to fairness.
Fairness. The let's put the F in fairness, not the F I prefer, but we'll talk about
Yeah, let's
fairness.
not code switch yet. All right, yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to switch to the explicit content. That'll be for later. But um, see us on keeping it real, unfiltered.
On OnlyFans. No, I'm just kidding. We're not doing that.
Catch us on our Patreon. No, I'm
Yeah.
just joking. So fairness is really just exactly how it seems. Is are things fair? Do we have uh fairness in our exchanges? Do we have fairness in the way that we approach work? Are we looking at discrepancies in treatment, discrepancies in expectations? Do we respond to things in a way that's fair and equitable for the workplace? Um, it's not just even fairness for ourselves, but it's fairness in general. So, like, for example, I can be treated very fairly, but if I'm noticing unfairness in other places, I'm going to feel unsafe because then I'm wondering, why is this happening? How are we letting this go? Where I see this the most, and one of the things I have advocated in human services for like a million years, is making sure that customers and clients have the same opportunities regardless of who they're assigned to. Because I, I don't know if anybody's worked with government, like if you've ever had to go to the DMV or Social Security or Any other public entity, like your treatment is 100% like connected to who takes your number. You know, who do you talk to? Are they going to be helpful? Are they going to, you know, hold you back? Whatever that looks like. Um, it's complicated, and again, people are very nuanced, but is it fair? So if I, let's say, let's go back to relatedness, I'm one of the team and I make a mistake, and they say to me, oh, Tiff, you made a mistake, you know, do better next time. And then they tell Carl, you made the same mistake, but we don't like you, so therefore you're going to have this stiffer penalty. I benefited from that unfairness, but do I feel safe? No, because I'm like, ooh, look at how they treated Carl when we did the same thing. Now I might not be so forthcoming when I make mistakes, because I can see that the way that they treat people is really dependent on how they feel about them. This isn't right. Or why does that person get to leave early and I always get in trouble if I try to scoot out? Or why is this person getting all of these cool projects and I'm getting stuck with the grunt work? That doesn't feel fair. So justice, fairness, equity, all of this, if it doesn't exist, it's going to feel very unsafe. And it, by the way, doesn't even have to be real. It can be perceived.
Yeah,
It can be
absolutely. Well,
perceived.
yeah, and it's something, you know, I know you work with line supervisors and emerging leaders, and you know, teach those classes. You want to be a supervisor, and I have one like that too. And we talk about boundary issues that go
Mhm.
from when you move from going from line staff to a line supervisor. There's certain things that you have to do, right? If you've got a happy hour gang and now you're managing that team, and you know that happy hour gang, you know, it's they're going to be perceived as your favorites, and
Yeah.
they may be your favorites, may absolutely be your best people in the world. And but that, you know, that fairness idea comes up.
Mhm.
And so it's definitely something where you have to create new boundaries, right? When I became a super, I supervised my old unit, the same folks that I used to come to work early for. And, you know, we used to do things together. We, you know, that if there was a pamper check party, if there was anything else, I'd be there. Right. And then I couldn't be there, maybe for birthdays, but I didn't stay for too long. Right. There were certain things socially that I, you know, just recognized there had to be some type of, just some type of barrier, you know, in
Right.
terms of, you know, because I don't want to be perceived as being playing favorites, and I don't want to give people, you know, too much leeway. And so it goes both ways, right? You know, we all have our favorite people in the world. We have our favorite clients, we have our favorite workers, we have our favorite bosses. But if everyone else is treated the same as our favorite clients, our favorite workers, our favorite children, don't lie, right?
I
Um,
have one. My kids
yeah,
know who it is.
right.
AJ,
But
what's up, AJ?
if everyone's treated the same,
Yeah.
then you know, then that's good, right? And that's where we want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's scarf, right? Any final thoughts about scarf before we wrap up to
I just, the use of it, look it up, learn about it. Here, I want to just end with some questions. We get some self reflection questions here at the end. I would like you to think about what what area of scarf makes you feel the most safe and what makes you feel the least safe. So of those things, again, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness, of those five, which of those are most important to you? And you'll know by which one affects you the most in terms of when it's not there, I feel really uncomfortable. So think about that. The other thing I would like you to think about is, how are you creating safety for others? So, how are you making people feel like they're important? How are you making sure you have clear expectations and people understand what those expectations are? How are you letting people make their own choices? How are you connecting with people and making sure that they belong? Past, again, like, do I like you or not? But do you really belong here? Are you part of this team? And lastly, of course, are you being fair? One little litmus test that I think about with fairness is, if this was my favorite person, what would I do? If this was my least favorite person, what would I do? And if they don't match up, then I'm not being fair. And so I try to always look at both sides, even with my kids, because I do have a favorite. But if it was my favorite kid, what would I do if it was my not favorite? And I try to create fairness around, again, I love them all the same, by the way. Don't hit me in the comments about you can't have a favorite kid. Everybody does. Don't lie to yourself. Carl's parents had it easy because he was an only child. So the birthday boy. So that's all. Just reflect what stands out to you. What can you do for other people to really create that certainty or that safety, which is what we're hoping for, because we want people to come to work and feel like they can do their job. Otherwise, we're just too distracted with all the other stuff going on, which is not good economic policy. It's not good for productivity, and it's definitely not good for morale. So that's all I got to say about that. Put a scarf on it. It's fall, y'all. Once it's under 90 degrees, but it's coming. Fall is coming. That was my Game of Thrones reference, a very loose Game of Thrones reference.
Yeah. Well, the Raven just came and told me that it's time for us to wrap up. So,
All right. All right.
But thank you for being here. We're going to continue this conversation. There's a lot more to psychological safety, but it definitely is worth having further conversation about. And so, stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you guys again sometime really soon. And until the next time, I'm Carl.
And I'm Tiff, and happy birthday, Carl. Welcome to 52. It looks good on you, man.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm just keeping it real, like with this beard. So,
Same. All right. See you soon.
To learn more about the SCARF model, visit www.neuroleadership.com.